Like it, subscribe, comment if you dare, because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back. The alarm screamed through the concrete corridors just after midnight, a sharp metallic howl that cut through the heavy South Carolina air. Red lights flickered across razor wire and gun towers, casting long shadows over the yard of one of the state's most notorious prisons. Guards ran toward cell block C as radios crackled with panic. Something had gone wrong. Something big. And everyone inside the fence knew it wasn't just another fight. It started with a body. An inmate lay face down near the laundry corridor, motionless, blood darkening the gray floor beneath him. There were no obvious weapons nearby, no signs of a riot, just silence that felt wrong. Too controlled. Too clean. By the time medical staff arrived, the man was already gone. Within minutes, the prison was locked down, steel doors slamming shut like a warning shot. But this death wasn't random. It was a message. For months, rumors had been circling inside South Carolina's prison system, whispers about a contraband operation so vast it was reshaping the balance of power behind bars. Drugs, phones, money, favors. An underground economy thriving in the shadows of razor wire and surveillance cameras. Officials dismissed it as exaggeration, inmates talking big. Until the night the alarms went off. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the edge of the corridor, staring at the body. 20 years in corrections had taught him how to read a scene. This wasn't impulsive violence. It was calculated. Someone had crossed a line. And someone else had made sure everyone knew the price. The prison sat miles away from any city, surrounded by pine trees and forgotten roads. From the outside, it looked like a fortress designed to erase men from the world. Inside, it was a pressure cooker, overcrowded, understaffed, and quietly boiling. Power didn't come from strength alone. It came from access. And access meant contraband. Phones were the real currency. With one device, an inmate could reach the outside world, coordinate deals, threaten witnesses, run operations that never stopped at the prison gate. Drugs followed close behind, numbing fear, buying loyalty. The system was never meant to support that kind of traffic. Yet somehow, it was happening. On a massive scale. The dead inmate was named Raymond Cole. Mid-30s. Non-violent sentence. No known enemies. Which made his death even more unsettling. Cole wasn't a kingpin. He was a courier. A small piece in a much larger machine. Investigators arrived before dawn. State officials, internal affairs, and a quiet team from outside the prison system. They sealed off cell block C and began pulling records, movement logs, phone pings, commissary transactions. What they found didn't make sense. Cole had no disciplinary write-ups. No recent conflicts. But his account activity told a different story. Sudden deposits. Unexplained transfers. Money moving fast, then disappearing. Someone had been paying him. And paying him well. Inmates were questioned one by one. Most said nothing. Some said too much. A few looked terrified. One name kept surfacing in fragments, never directly, always half-spoken. A man known only as Preacher. No official record. No clear face. Just influence. The kind that didn't need to shout. Guards searched cells with surgical precision, tearing through mattresses, vents, lockers. They found phones. Dozens of them. More than anyone expected. Hidden in places that suggested planning, not desperation. This wasn't smuggling by chance. It was a system. Captain Hale felt it in his gut. This operation wasn't being pushed from the outside in. It was being built from the inside out. As the lockdown stretched into its second day, tension spiked. Inmates banged on doors, shouting through steel. Guards worked double shifts, nerves fraying. The prison felt like it was holding its breath. Everyone sensed something else was coming. Then another discovery changed everything. In a maintenance corridor rarely used, investigators found a concealed panel behind a row of pipes. Inside was a stash. Phones, SIM cards, handwritten notes, lists of names. Not just inmates. Staff schedules. Shift rotations. Weak points in the system mapped out in detail. This wasn't just contraband. It was intelligence. Someone had been studying the prison like a battlefield. And Raymond Cole had known too much. As dawn broke on the third day, Captain Hale received a call that made his blood run cold. Another inmate had gone missing during lockdown. No camera footage. No cell logs. It was as if the man had vanished inside a locked facility. The prison wasn't just compromised. It was being controlled. And when investigators finally forced open a sealed storage room beneath cell block C, they realized the truth was far worse than anyone imagined. Because what they found inside proved this operation didn't stop at smuggling, it was something much bigger, much darker, and it was already spiraling out of control. The storage room smelled of rust and damp concrete, the kind of place no one noticed until it mattered. When investigators stepped inside, their flashlights cut across stacks of broken furniture and outdated equipment. At first glance, it looked like junk. Then someone kicked aside a toppled locker and revealed a narrow opening in the wall. Not a hole. A passage. It wasn't wide, but it was deliberate, reinforced with scrap metal, hidden behind layers of neglect. The kind of work that took time, patience, and help. The passage angled upward, disappearing into darkness. Captain Hale felt the temperature drop. This wasn't just smuggling contraband into the prison. This was movement. Control of space. They sealed the area immediately. Word traveled faster than the official reports ever could. By the time the warden was briefed, inmates across multiple blocks were already reacting. Doors rattled. Voices rose. Somewhere in the distance, a fire alarm chirped once, then went silent. The missing inmate's name was Luis Moreno. Serving time for a parole violation. Quiet. Kept his head down. But Moreno's cellmate told investigators something that didn't sit right. Moreno had been nervous for days, pacing, whispering about deliveries and deadlines. He'd said if he missed his window, someone would come for him. Now he was gone. The investigation widened. State officials authorized phone data subpoenas, tracing numbers that shouldn't exist inside a prison. What came back stunned them. Calls routed through burner phones connected to addresses across South Carolina, Georgia, even as far as Florida. Some linked to known smuggling rings. Others tied to shell companies and prepaid cards. This wasn't a prison problem anymore. It was organized crime operating behind bars. Captain Hale focused on one pattern that kept reappearing. Calls made at shift changes. Messages sent during maintenance windows. Deliveries timed to chaos. Fights, medical emergencies, power flickers. Someone inside knew the rhythms of the prison better than the people running it. Suspicion turned inward. Internal affairs began quietly pulling staff records. Overtime logs. Financial disclosures. One officer stood out. Officer Daniel Rourke. 10 years on the job. Clean record. Recently bought a new truck far beyond his pay grade. When questioned, Rourke blamed family money. But his hands shook when he said it. Before investigators could dig deeper, the prison erupted. It started in the yard during a brief, tightly controlled recreation window. 2 inmates went down fighting. Guards rushed in. And in the confusion, a 3rd inmate collapsed near the fence, convulsing. Medical staff later confirmed it was an overdose. The drug was new, potent, fast-acting, and not something typically seen inside. Contraband had evolved. Lockdown resumed, harder this time. The warden ordered lights on 24 hours a day. Meals delivered to cells. No movement without escorts. But pressure doesn't disappear when you contain it. It builds. That night, Captain Hale received an anonymous note slipped under his office door. No name. Just 4 words written in block letters. "You're looking wrong way." Attached was a crude map of the prison. A section was circled in red. The chapel. The chapel was considered neutral ground. Services, counseling, quiet reflection. It was also one of the few places inmates from different blocks crossed paths. Investigators had searched it before, superficially. This time, they went deeper. Behind the altar, they found a locked cabinet no one could account for. Inside were phones wrapped in plastic, ledgers listing transactions, and a small notebook with a single word written over and over again on different pages. Preacher. The name finally had weight. Inmates began talking, not openly, but enough to paint a picture. Preacher wasn't loud. He didn't threaten. He listened. He offered protection, access, favors. He controlled supply by controlling trust. And he punished betrayal quietly. Luis Moreno hadn't vanished. He'd been moved. The hidden passage connected to old service tunnels beneath the prison, remnants from decades earlier. According to blueprints, most had been sealed. But not all. Someone had reopened them, reinforced them, used them. Search teams descended into the tunnels before dawn. The air was stale, heavy with dust. Flashlights revealed footprints, drag marks, empty food containers. Evidence of recent use. Then they found a door reinforced from the inside. Behind it was a makeshift holding area. No inmate inside. Just restraints fixed to the wall and a blood-stained shirt folded neatly on the floor. Forensic teams later confirmed it belonged to Moreno. He had been interrogated. Not by guards. By inmates. The realization hit hard. Preacher wasn't just moving contraband. He was enforcing discipline. Running a parallel system of justice inside the prison. As investigators pieced it together, Officer Rourke failed to report for his shift. His phone went straight to voicemail. By the time state police reached his apartment, it was empty. No signs of a struggle. Just a laptop left open on the kitchen table. On the screen was a single email draft. "I can't fix this anymore." The prison was on edge. Leadership was compromised. Trust was gone. And somewhere inside those walls, Preacher was watching the response, adjusting strategy, deciding who would fall next. Late that evening, Captain Hale received confirmation that changed the direction of the case. Preacher wasn't an alias. It was a role. A title passed down. And the man currently holding it wasn't serving life. He was scheduled for release in less than 6 months. And as the sun set over the razor wire, alarms began to sound again. This time from a block that hadn't been touched yet. Because whatever Preacher was planning, it wasn't finished. The alarms screamed through the prison like a living thing, echoing down concrete corridors and ricocheting off steel doors. Red lights pulsed overhead, washing the walls in a warning glow. Inmates shouted from their cells. Guards sprinted past one another, radios crackling with overlapping commands. The block that had gone dark was C Block. The oldest wing in the facility, the one scheduled for renovation but never quite empty. Captain Hale moved fast, flanked by state investigators and tactical officers. Every step felt late. Whatever Preacher had set in motion, it was unfolding now. C Block had always been a pressure point. Narrow walkways. Blind corners. Old wiring. It was where inmates were sent when administrators wanted them out of sight but not in full segregation. If you wanted to test a system, this was where you did it. They reached the control booth and found it empty. No struggle. No signs of forced entry. Just a chair pulled back and a radio left behind, still humming with static. Someone had planned this moment down to the minute. Inside the block, cell doors were locked, but not from the outside. Inmates banged on steel, some shouting for help, others laughing. Smoke curled from the far end of the tier, thin but deliberate. Not a fire meant to destroy, one meant to distract. Hale spotted movement on the upper level. A figure stepped into the light, calm amid the chaos. He was older than most, hair cropped short, posture relaxed. He raised his hands slowly, not in surrender, but in greeting. That was when Hale understood. Preacher wasn't hiding anymore. His real name was Marcus Bell. Convicted of fraud and racketeering nearly a decade earlier. No history of violence. No gang tattoos. No obvious power base. He'd been invisible by design. Bell had studied people, not force. He learned who needed protection, who wanted leverage, who was desperate enough to trade silence for safety. Bell spoke, his voice carrying easily over the noise. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He spoke like a man delivering a sermon. "You came looking for tunnels and phones," he said. "You never asked why they worked." Tactical officers moved into position, weapons trained, but Bell didn't flinch. He stepped closer to the railing, eyes locked on Hale. "You think this place runs on rules?" Bell continued. "It runs on gaps. And every gap gets filled." Hale ordered him to get on the ground. Bell smiled. Behind Hale, An investigator whispered urgently. Phone lines across the prison were lighting up. External calls. Media alerts. Documents were being leaked in real time. Transaction records, guard misconduct reports, internal memos showing years of ignored warnings. Preacher had gone public. Bell raised his voice just enough to be heard. You shut this down tonight, and another one starts somewhere else tomorrow. Because you didn't build this. You allowed it. The smoke thickened. Fire suppression systems kicked in late, flooding the tier with mist. In the confusion, Bell moved. Not running. Just stepping back, disappearing into the shadows as doors along the tier clicked open in sequence. Someone had overridden the system. Chaos erupted. Inmates poured into the corridor, not attacking, not rioting, moving with purpose. Guards fell back, stunned by the coordination. This wasn't a riot. It was an extraction. Bell reappeared briefly at the stairwell, eyes meeting Hale's one last time. Then he was gone. The lockdown that followed was absolute. Federal agents arrived before dawn. The warden was placed on administrative leave. Officer Rourke was officially named a person of interest, his financial trail now impossible to ignore. The tunnels were sealed with concrete and steel. Phones were confiscated by the dozens. But Bell wasn't found. Luis Moreno's body was discovered 3 days later in a wooded area miles from the prison. Cause of death ruled accidental. Exposure. No signs of a struggle. The message was clear. Preacher punished failure, but he didn't waste resources. The media called it a victory. Headlines praised the crackdown, the reforms, the sweeping changes promised by officials. New scanners. New oversight. New leadership. Inside the prison, the atmosphere changed. Quieter. Tighter. But not safer. Hale reviewed the final report alone in his office late one night. Bell's release date had been suspended pending investigation, but there was no evidence tying him directly to the smuggling operation. Everything had been done through layers of intermediaries. Conversations implied, never stated. Orders suggested, never written. Bell had exploited the system's need for certainty. At the end of the report was an addendum. A note from a federal analyst. Contraband flow reduced by 60%. However, similar patterns emerging in 2 neighboring states. Hale leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He knew what that meant. Preacher wasn't a man anymore. He was a blueprint. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the prison, addressed to no one in particular. It contained a single page. No return address. Systems don't fail, it read. They adapt. Bell was transferred quietly to another facility. No announcement. No cameras. Just a name crossed off one roster and added to another. Somewhere else, new gaps waited to be filled. And as the lights dimmed in South Carolina's most secure prison, one truth lingered in the silence. They stopped the contraband. They never stopped the idea. The South Carolina prison had never felt emptier. Lights blazed in sterile white, hallways scrubbed clean, cameras hanging from ceilings like silent sentinels. Administrators boasted of reform. Security upgrades were in place. New protocols, new scanners, new lockdown drills. On paper, the system had been reset. But Captain Hale knew better. It was in the little things. Guards walking slightly faster, eyes flicking over their radios more than usual. Inmates whispering in corners, carefully, too carefully. A small package left in a laundry chute, gone before anyone could check. Notes slipped under doors with no fingerprints. Bell's presence had left an imprint deeper than walls, locks, and concrete could erase. In the weeks following the riots, federal authorities conducted interviews, scoured financial records, and interrogated known associates. Officer Rourke was arrested for conspiracy and bribery, but even in custody, he said nothing of Preacher's true methods. He couldn't. Bell had trained him well. Loyalty, fear, and manipulation intertwined like invisible chains. Then came the letters. Not official memos. Not threats. Handwritten, typed, delivered by strangers with no ties. Some were taunting. Others instructional. One, left on Hale's desk, had a simple diagram, a map of the ventilation shafts spanning 2 blocks, with arrows indicating movement patterns and points of vulnerability. Systems adapt, it read again, echoing the last words from Bell. The prison had been fortified, but the human element, obedience, fear, loyalty, couldn't be scanned or locked down. Inmates began testing limits subtly, swapping meals, sharing phones hidden in plumbing, coordinating small infractions that snowballed into serious disruptions. It was a reminder that while walls can hold bodies, they cannot contain ingenuity. If you think this story was intense, you're not ready for the next one. Like it, subscribe, comment if you dare, because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back.